Hi, everybody. My name is Dr. Richard Norman, and I'm a postdoctoral fellow at Ryerson University in the Ted Rogers School of Management, and also connected with the Future of Sport Lab. So my journey to get here was not quite the most straightforward that a lot of other academics follow. I came to academics late in life. In fact, when I was 50, I decided to go back and do my PhD, which really took me in a completely different direction where I'd been before. But before that, I was a strategic consultant for about 25 years and working in the private sector with a number of different clients, from public to private, with lots of different kinds of variations, land use, forestry, and moving into the digital world. I worked at the Toronto Film Festival for quite a number of years, but mostly I've been out on my own as a consultant, working on projects that interest me and follow my passions. So that's really what my background is. What took me back to school was I started playing tennis. I came into, yes, like everything else later in life. In my 20s, I started taking tennis quite seriously, and I started playing in tournaments. I happened to be out in Vancouver at the time and had to go to a country club to play a tournament. And the tournament stipulated that I needed to wear tennis whites. And for me, coming from the background, being all over the world, doing lots of different kinds of projects, it sort of tweaked my interest. Like, why is this a tradition that is important for the sport to continue? And that brought me back to doing my master's at OCAD University, which was something called Strategic Foresight and Innovation, which is really another way of branding futurism. So I look at the future. How do you predict what may happen 20 to 50 years in the future? Asking those really important questions about what do we do, what does it look like, and perhaps how can we better prepare for the future? And from there, I really continued to go along that lines and happened across, doing my PhD. In my PhD studies, I started to focus on race. And I must admit, it took me a while to come to that understanding of why I needed to focus on race, and more importantly on colonialism, to really understand the impacts of the social arrangements we have in sport, and what does that mean when we look at this amazing institution and this cultural phenomenon that is sport, from the lowest level, from community sport all the way up to high performance professional leagues and the Olympics. And that was really the focus of what I wanted to understand, was what was it about certain sports that continued to manifest as quote unquote white-centered sports? Why were they predominantly white? Why did they continue along those lines? And thinking back to these tennis explorations that I did, it's like, well, I mean, here you have a tradition of wearing tennis whites, and what does that mean? What does it symbolize? And that's really important to understand, not only as sport being a microcosm of how we understand our society, but what are the implications of that when we take a look at how that impacts our society today? So fast forward to my postdoctoral fellow at Ryerson, and I can't escape what's happened over the last 18 months, not only COVID, but obviously the calls for social justice on so many different levels, particularly with the killing of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, leading into Black Lives Matter, what has happened within the world of sport, and players, particularly Black women, standing up and wanting everyone else to be accountable for their actions within this world, leading into a period of anti-Asian hate and what that was like, and continues to persist and has always actually been there. But it really opens up this big can of worms of what is sport, how does it actually function, and what does it mean for us to participate in sport, but also to be fans of sport, to be entertained by sport, and what are the good sides and what are the bad sides of that. So my research right now is doing a number of different things. One, I'm focusing on the questions of what does sport mean to racialized persons or persons that are identifying as being associated with a community that's been pushed to the margins in society, and really trying to understand what are the personal experiences and how those can better allow us to plan, understand, and also unpack some of these really challenging and deeply rooted systemic issues that persist today. From my earlier work looking at race and colonialism, it's inescapable the role of colonialism and how that's shaped our society, and of course, how that also influenced sports today. So when I think about sport and when I think about what's happening in the world, I can't, separate those things from these larger social phenomena that are arrangements that are going on outside of the world of sport. So when you think about it for yourselves, what do you think, about the role of race in sport, of gender, of the intersection of those two things, of these intersections across multiple spectrums? What's happening with, the role of LGBTQ2S communities, and what is, what are the implications for sport? How does that actually inform our ideas about masculinity? How does that inform our understanding of space, of our connection to land? There are so many conduits that you can look at through sport to really get a better understanding of what are our social arrangements and what does that mean for society? How does that impact us? And moving forward, what are the kinds of questions that we really need to ask ourselves to be critical and understand our world, so that, from my perspective, so that we can make it a more socially just way of being and arranging ourselves. So when you start to look at some of the phenomenon that's going around the world today, from climate crisis to, to war-torn countries, to refugees, economic, political, a number of different things that are going on, what's happening in Afghanistan and what's going on in Palestine, you have to start to ask yourselves these questions about the traditions that we uphold in something that seems benign and innocuous like sport. How do those reinforce certain ways of being and doing things in our world? And what does that mean when we start to focus on those things rather than perhaps making our world more inclusive to understand different perspectives from a global sense? And then best, how do we move forward with those kinds of ideas? So when I think about what's next for me, one of the big questions that I have is, what do you all see as the future for this world and for this idea of sport we have? From my perspective, one of the biggest areas that are missing in these conversations is the young people who are really going to take over the reins and really guide this society and all of the roles into the future. So what I'm really hoping to do is to challenge my research and involve youth from start to finish in terms of creating, new research projects that can really privilege those voices amongst every other sort of voice that is perhaps marginalized within our society, bringing those together, but also really do it from a youth focus to try and understand what is new, what is different, perhaps how we can look at things a little bit differently so that we can hopefully right this ship and make things a better place for all of us moving forward. So that's one of the big things that I'm really hoping to do. And the second thing is really try to bring the idea of scholarship and academia, to bring that out of these, quote unquote, ivory towers, where we hold on to this knowledge. This knowledge is used for specific purposes. We publish in journals, we publish, in particular areas that only are read by those people who are very interested in that area of study, and trying to bring the insights and the use of this research into more practical forms that can benefit everybody in society, so they can not have to always answer those questions and say, oh, what if this, or how about this, and saying, no, we've already asked those questions. Here's some ways that we can interpret that. And once you do that, to bring those answers to a wider range of people, so that we don't have to get stuck on the questions, and we can start to take a look forward and asking different things and perhaps finding different possibilities and solutions. So I hope that this was informative for you. I hope that you have a passion for, academia and a passion for research, because this new, as the next generation that is coming up, you're the one that have to really ask these critical questions and come up with different solutions beyond what we are doing today. So I really encourage you to get passionate about the things that you find, are perhaps a little questionable in our society, and that you can put your full attention in to hopefully find some different solutions and really benefit our society. Thanks very much.